Hi, my name is Maddie, and today I'm going to be going over Depression Quest. This is the brainchild of one Zoe Quinn, who is basically trying to highlight the context of depression, and so she created a visual novel of sorts where you play as someone who is undergoing depression, and I wanted to sort of give my thoughts. First and foremost, one of the problems I have with this game is I don't feel it is very indicative of all contexts of depression. I feel like it's very indicative of one very narrow context of depression. Having played through about half of it already before in an hour-long playthrough that the audio cut out, unfortunately, on that one, I felt like there were a lot of flaws. A lot of the problem was the character was not meeting their own needs, was ignoring their needs. When they started to get help, they would not stick through with it, and that's very vital to how therapies work. There were so many other problems, and they'll become more apparent as we actually go through. So you play someone in their mid-20s, you have a girlfriend, you have a caring mother, but she's a little critical of you. You have a brother who's very successful, where you're not. You work a very menial job, you have some friends, but you don't really find anything to be a lot of fun. Now, you have a project that someone suggested that you do, and you're very passionate about it. And it's good because that can be a form of rehabilitative therapy, but you find that you're starting to see it more as work than to actually see it as something fun or something to be passionate about. And what I would say is, if in a normal context, if it isn't working for you, try to find something else. That's not an option here. Now, when you try to do your work on this Wednesday night, you find that you're exhausted, you don't know if you want to do it. Your options are, do you order some food? Well, that's crossed out. Do you sit down at your desk and try to do something? Do you turn on the TV and procrastinate, or you just not do it at all? So I picked sit down and try to do something, because you know what? You want to try to have fun with it. The thing is, your motivation goes away, so you take a break. Then you go back to it, you take another break. You haven't gotten really much done. You keep doing this until you eventually go to bed. My problem with this choice is that, it's like all three options are just a failure. Like, failure is the only option. Which I feel is a little extreme to say, and it's not always the case. But, and then the other thing is, you go from depressed to very depressed very easily. And the thing with depression and anxiety and bipolar disorder is it's on a spectrum. Some people are very gradual in reaching their lower points, and then it takes longer for them to rebound. Some people get to their lowest points like on a flash, and then they rebound instantly. It's very extreme for someone to very quickly fall into depression and not be able to rebound from it. Usually that takes a very traumatic event. And so I don't feel like this is very realistic from the get-go. Now it's Friday, your girlfriend asks if you can hang out, you're not feeling well. The thing is, you feel like she's trying to convince you, and she's kind of insistent, but you have to put your health first, even if it's over your relationship, and you shouldn't feel faulted by that. That's just my take on it. So I'd say you're just not feeling well and can't make it. Now, before we continue, I do want to point out that I have had girlfriends who've done this. Before I transitioned from male to female, I dated a lot of women back in high school. And one of the big things was I did have a few that were very, very into taking up most of my attention. And when I couldn't provide for them, that did make me feel really bad. So I can relate to that in a sense, but making it to where you have to beat yourself up over it, like this character does, I don't think that's a very fair assessment. I really don't, but that's just me. Now, Saturday rolls around, your mother comes by, and she asks if something's wrong, but you don't want to tell her exactly what's going on. A lot of people do the textbook, I'm fine, it's no big deal, you have nothing to worry about. I wouldn't condone this at all, ever, because of the fact that it's very important that you be honest if things are starting to go bad. then you should start considering talking to someone, even if it hurts, what's going to happen is people are going to look at you funny, unfortunately. People are going to think, oh, you are in danger of hurting yourself. But the thing is, the step to healing is admitting that you have a problem. So I would say, for right now, I'm fine and thank you for asking. She says as long as you're okay. Your depression is starting to go up a little bit. You're not seeing a therapist yet, and you're not taking medication for depression. Now, phone rings. Coworker asks if you want a kitten. They do it like a sales pitch. They try and guilt you into it. Here's the thing. You feel like you're being guilt-tripped, but you don't feel like you're capable of taking on the responsibility, and the cat's going to go to a shelter. You shouldn't be coerced, and if a person's coercing you into doing something, that's wrong. And that person's not a good friend, and you shouldn't feel bad. So even though you feel like you continue to beat yourself up over it. You continue to feel that this is your fault. And you're ignoring your needs, and you can't put your needs up and basically give up your needs in favor of someone else's or a pet's needs or anything. If you can't take care of a pet, you can't take care of a pet. You shouldn't have a pet. If you can't be there for someone, you can't be there for someone. But you have to put yourself first. And it's hard, and I've been there, and I've tried to put everybody first. And in a sense, I still do try to put everybody first. But so it just irritates me because of the fact that, it is a matter of, not making sure your needs are met. And you really should be trying to make sure your needs are met. I think that's the biggest issue here. Friday afternoon, you get a call from Alex, you start to hang out. You notice that she's a little distant, so you ask Alex if she's happy with the relationship. Here's the thing, and I say here's the things a lot, please don't get too annoyed by it, but this seems like it's being portrayed as a negative option. And this is erroneous for two reasons. One, even if you're in a healthy relationship, you should always be communicating with your partner and making sure they're happy. Always. You should not be afraid to ask. And so here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask this, and the character gets defensive. So it's because of the fact you say, it's not what you usually be up to. And they ask, what do you mean by that? It's not that, but I like spending time with you, okay? If I wouldn't be here. The character is defensive, and that's not right. You should be, even in a healthy relationship, asking if things are okay. And I think it's wrong that that's being vilified. Second, making it to where everyone else is the enemy in depression just affirms the isolation that comes in depression. And it's really setting the character up in a bad way. You see your depression goes way up again, and it's just a bother. It's really deeply concerning. Now, you're talking to an old friend. You go out to a coffee shop. She notices something is wrong. There are a couple of options here about confiding or choosing to put it off. Now, this is a person who you haven't seen in a while. You think you can trust them. And this was an interesting one because of the fact that I picked notice your hands are shaking, because when you do that, you begin to break down. And in my opinion, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree, it's okay to cry, even in public. And I think it's right that, you let it out. I think that that's the first step. The first step, of course, is admitting you have a problem. I think that if you understand that your health is taking a turn, especially your emotional health, that is something that will help in the long run in taking those steps. I don't think that people have a right to vilify you. I don't think that people have a right to see you as weak. I think that it's good, and I don't think you have a right to see yourself as weak. I think you're doing a disservice to yourself when you do that. So I like that this option was in there because it feels like it's a redeeming point for the visual novel, because it feels like it's showing that, a way out is always a step away. Alright, Monday morning, you meet up with your brother. Your brother is so much more successful than you are. has a Camaro, which he traded in his own Honda Civic for. He just got a promotion. His career's taking off. He has a wife. They're thinking of getting a house. And meanwhile, you feel pathetic because you have a dental, a night guard because you've been gritting your teeth from the stress. Your job is not satisfying and you don't really get along well with your girlfriend. But it's very fallacious in, like, it's just... The thing is, you cannot compare yourself to others because you only see the outside. You never see the inside of what that person is going through. Let me give you a few examples. High school. We had a thing, it was called breaking down the walls. And it went into this, and back in high school, I felt like everyone was basically had a perfect life. I had been in a mental hospital once already. I was undergoing depression. I was on medication. I was fighting with my gender identity. I had all of these things that were just bothering me, and I felt like I was the only one with those problems. Well, at Breaking Down the Walls, we got to see into other people's lives and see that even the most successful people in our classes were going through severe depression, social anxiety, a feeling of inadequacy, problems at home, unsure of how they were going to survive in the real world. You never see the inside of a person. And so, when you look at someone, and you get into this feeling that you have to compare to them, or that you have to be envious of what they have, you're doing a further disservice to yourself. And I was a lot more thorough when I was looking at this game the first time, but for the sake of time, I do want to go through these rather quickly. The second thing, and this is kind of important, is that, you know, these things take time. Right now, I just recently got my associate's degree. It took me 3 years to do. It normally should take a person 1.5 to 2 years. More recently, I just got a promotion at work. I have my own office, I have my own computer, and I have an extension. Well, I'll be getting an extension pretty soon for the phones. But I still live with my family. I don't make a lot of money. There are a lot of friends who have been working for a lot longer than I have, and who have a house, who have an apartment, who have a wife, who have children. And you know what? That's okay. It should be alright to take your time. It should be alright to try and test the waters. Everything is a learning experience. And one of the flaws this game does, or I should say this visual novel does, one of its flaws is it never treats a job as a learning experience. And that's very wrong. Jobs should be treated as learning experiences, and you'll see more of that later. So I said tell him about the tooth grinding problem, but not the stress. Of course he picks up on the stress. You don't want to get really into it, but you just decide to not pry. When you get home, you throw the night guard out. You can't even stand to look at the thing. This kind of comes out of left field to me. And I feel like it's a continual ignorance of one's health. If you're going to ignore your health, I can already see what's going to happen. You're going to get sick. You're going to have more problems as things start to get out of your control. You're going to spiral. I can already see that this character is close to spiraling. And it even says, you know, you're deeply depressed. But this isn't strictly a depression thing. And I don't think the distinction is made by Zoe Quinn in saying this. Because even the most optimistic and happy people, the people who for depression is far from their mind, will disregard their health. They may skip meals. They may skip sleep. Because they're out and they're doing things and they'll get burned out. But they'll ignore it because they want to have fun or they want to enjoy themselves or they want to be so many different things. They get very sick and they spiral. I'm sure most of you remember the Coney 2012 thing. The guy who organized it believed very truly in what he was doing. He had so much passion for it, but he neglected his physical health. He almost took his own life. He ended up in the hospital. He completely broke down, and that's not a depression thing. That's a health, like a total self-awareness thing, and you need to be self-aware. And I think if a person is not self-aware, that's a bigger problem than their actual depression. Honestly. But writing it off as depression is problematic because of the fact that it takes normal people who have that problem and it makes it seem like they don't need to do anything about it, when they probably should be. Alright. You grab your coffee. You see an email from the girl you met at the coffee shop, Amanda, the old friend. She gives you the number. Now, you're a little torn on it, but you really shouldn't hesitate to call. And the fact that 2 of those options are blocked out really bothers me. Because of the fact that even the second option would have been a good option to do. And you're making it really hard for the person playing this visual novel to make the decisions that are conducive to their health and well-being, even if they don't agree with it. So number 3 is closest option, because even if you don't agree with it, you still want to give it a try. You still want to, you want to try and get better. Because if you don't want to try and get better, if you think, there's nothing wrong, I'm normal, and here's the thing, I don't think this character feels like they're normal. And if they don't feel like they're normal, why would they go on and try to make themselves believe that they're normal? So you make the appointment, but you're not sure if you want to go, so you think about it, and you decide to make the call anyway. But you don't know if you want to go, so you sit in your car, you're terrified. You think this could help, but you're worried about really talking to a stranger about these things. And you're also worried about being on medication. I feel like this game buys into the stigmas too much. Because therapists are trained to be open and accepting, and I've gone to therapists since I was 14 years old. So I've been to all kinds, and they're meant to be open and accepting, not have an opinion, try to be very professional, and try to help you grow. They're about cultivating you. It's about cultivation. It's not about fixing you. It's about cultivating you. They want you to become strong enough to where you can stand on your own and start to heal yourself. That's what a therapist is for. And then with the medication, a lot of people are against it because, the risk of the side effects, the feeling it'll make you a zombie, but a lot of that is stigma as well. And I've been really just disappointed in a lot of people who claim to be very into helping people with depression and then throw out these stigmas. Jonathan Ian Mathers of Neurotic Yours, he gets a lot of criticism for this, and I actually agree with the criticism because he believes that a person should fight depression cold turkey. A person should not get on medication for any reason, because the side effects will be a lot worse than any help it could do, and I think that's wrong. The preconceived notion is that medication is very generic, and it's not. There are different medications for different disorders. There are different dosages for different disorders. There's all sorts of things, and if something doesn't work, it's up to the patient to be open with their therapist or psychiatrist about it not working so that a better regimen can be introduced. And if it doesn't work, the therapist will decide whether to just withhold medication entirely. It's entirely up to the person who's taking the medication and the therapist who is giving the medication to communicate. Everything is about communication here. And also assessing one's needs. It all comes down to assessing one's needs. And the failure to assess one's needs is not a depression thing. It isn't. Making it a depression thing complicates the issue. Alright, the next thing, the job thing. And this was a really huge one that I'm really going to criticize Zoe Quinn on. You wake up 20 minutes before your alarm rings, but today you are so tired and so irritated and so depressed you cannot get out of bed even after your alarm goes off normally. Do you head into work or do you call your boss? A lot of people might say head into work, and that's the problem. With jobs, there's a lot of things to consider. The most important thing is it has to be a good person-job fit. You have to be passionate about the work you're doing. If you are not passionate, you cannot be a good employee, because your heart will never be in it. You have to be invested. But it's up to your employer to ensure that you are continually invested once you've started, and to make sure that your needs are met once you've started. If they are not doing that, they are doing you a disservice. For example, I work in education. It's no stranger that I work in education, but I used to work in insurance. And so I dealt with a lot of horrible people. A lot of people just saw me as a tool to get what they wanted, and there were times where I completely broke down. Now, my supervisor was very considerate about this, made sure that I needed this, or got the space that I needed. My actual boss was a little less so, and he let me go when he realized that I wasn't going to do what he wanted. And I'm glad he let me go now because of the fact that when I started working in education, I found that my supervisors and my bosses and my HR, they were all very considerate of what I was going through, because I was going through some really bad times. Poor health, anxiety, my bipolar disorder was getting out of hand, I was having low points, I'd had breakdowns, I'd had to call 911 on myself a few times, and they were considerate of that, and that's what they should be. You shouldn't be afraid to talk to your boss or your supervisor about things that are going on in your life, because they need to know so that they can help you just as much. The third option would be to have your therapist communicate with your boss directly, and that's always an option. But it's very important to have communication. So if you're not feeling well, call, send an email, and be honest with them. And I feel like the character doesn't quite do that yet. They're not at the point of healing, which is unfortunate, but the next day, they have to go back to work. And they feel bad because of the fact, they feel like, okay, they're treating it as if they themselves played hooky or they didn't deserve it. And again, it's a work stigma. And I'll get into that more in a bit. Now, it's 2 a.m. Sunday, you have work in the morning. You cannot sleep. What do? This part, you're very constricted in what you can do. Zoe, the game maker, she's not letting you do most of that. She's giving you these options, but taking them away from you, making it to where there's only one option, and that goes against everything that depression is. Depression is not a narrow context. There is never a one-size-fits-all action that a person with depression or bipolar or schizophrenia or some other mental condition or emotional condition is going to take. Everyone is different. Everyone has different challenges that they face. You're basically throwing them into a narrow subset, ensuring that they're going to spiral or that they're going to screw up. Because you're trying to drive this point home that depression is this extreme thing, and that isn't correct. Okay, sleep is going nowhere. You get out of bed, you start talking to an online friend. They ask if you're thinking too much again, you say you guessed it, want to talk about it. You end up talking for a long time. He says, it sounds like you have depression, you might want to see a doctor about that. So, do you want to tell him the truth or not? I'd say tell the truth. You know what? If you're already going to a therapist, you might as well say it. You might as well consider that part of the first steps to healing. You have to admit that, you know what, you're doing this because you need to be healed. You need to heal yourself. They say, okay, I'm glad. I've heard it's not an easy one, and you get the support. And a lot of people are going to be supportive. They are. You just have to understand that, you know what, a lot of these fears are in your own mind. If you've ever watched Neon Genesis Evangelion, you know Shinji Ikari. He's very afraid that people are going to disrespect him if he admits that he is troubled. But then at the end he realizes it's all in his mind and that the people really are there to help him. And people are there to help. So I guess that is a good point in the visual novel's favor. Alright. You've just gotten off work. You're lost in thought, feeling frustration. Okay, here's what bothers me. Your outlook has flipped 180 degrees at this point. Look at the rhetoric being used. The last thing you wanted to do is deal with your insufferable boss on top of everything else. It used to be you enjoyed the work, but you felt like you weren't giving your all. And now what you're doing is you're blaming the people who are there. And I feel like that's that's a misconception, really, of what work is or what it should be like. If you don't like the job, it's not a good fit for you. You should start to think about either asking for something new, something that'll challenge you or that'll help you grow. Really being honest with your boss that you aren't being challenged in the right way or not being challenged enough. That's one way you can go about it. Or start looking for a better job. But you shouldn't blame your job for being the cause of your depression. Because really, that's trying to rationalize it and trying to step away from, that things are wrong. So I feel, and I don't know what Zoe Quinn's job history is, and I don't want to attack her indiscriminately or do anything like that, but I feel like if she's using a bias to institute that a lot of jobs are just corporate hellholes that people just are designed to hate, she's not doing anyone any favors by saying, they should just, either stop caring or be unproductive, or just not do anything, or try and, become some successful entrepreneur like she's trying to be. And I worry that's something she might be doing. Because, you know what, there are jobs where you're working for someone else that can be very rewarding. And to paint all jobs, or many jobs, in this light is very concerning. So I'd say reach out to someone close to you because you've started therapy. You might as well keep at it. The idea here is to keep being invested in it, no matter what. So your head feels too noisy and you need to trade it from the actual conversation. You can call your mother or your girlfriend. There's more than one way to do this. I wouldn't call Malcolm because, there's two reasons. One, he's your brother. You're not as close as you would be with the other two. And the other is he might have problems of his own. You never know. So I'd call Alex, personally. Because, like I said in the beginning, you have to be open to communication. So basically, you meet at a diner, you stay a few hours, and you start to just unload everything. And you start to be genuine and just explain it all. You don't quite explain that you're depressed yet or seeing a therapist, but you start to discuss how your job is starting to get to you, you don't feel like you have a purpose. And she responds positively to this. And that's good, because communication's essential. And if she had responded negatively, I would have criticized the game a lot for painting this picture that people are not considerate of that. But the fact that it does is good, and I will give that a point in favor. Alright, now comes the time where, prescriptions start to come up. Now, you start to worry about it because of the fact that you were, of course, like you said earlier, you feel like you're going to be a zombie, or you feel like only certain people. And here's the thing. I would say that you want to accept a prescription as a way to augment your therapy, because if you're starting, you need to be invested in it. I'm just going to keep reiterating, you need to be invested. So you think over the matter long hard. It's strange to think that recently none of this sort of thing was even on your radar, and here you are being asked to make a decision about it. You're skeptical and nervous, getting over the shock, or even talking to a therapist. Still, over the years, you've done enough entry reading the subject. You know that it doesn't help, it doesn't hurt, right? So you decide to bite the bullet. And this is a very important step. Because, one, it's not forever. Eventually, you will be taken off it. And two, it's going to be catered to you specifically. So you're not... If you do end up becoming a zombie, as they say, you can always change it as needed. So, let's continue. Alright, it's Wednesday evening. You go to your parents' house for a holiday. You, Malcolm's wife, everyone's down for dinner. Your mother asks you, how long are you going to stay at the job of yours? This really irritated me. Because honestly, if you're honest, you don't know what you want to do. You're 20 years old. You don't know what you want to do because, you know what? You don't have a lot of experience in your belt. And in 2014, a lot of people are at this point. The unemployment rate for those who are in the 18 to 24 crowd is twice as high now in 2014 as it is for all the other age groups. And really, compared to, say, like 1980, and it's staggering the amount of increase. People don't know what they want to do. And the mother in this case really blasts you on it, criticizes you for it, and has no right to. Now the father takes the right side and says, there's nothing wrong with not knowing what you want to do in your 20s, because that's true. There's no reason for the mother to be such a perfectionist. And honestly, I feel like the way it's being portrayed, it's making the characters seem like they're at fault. And I don't think that's right. I think that it's really counterproductive, but, you know, I will admit, realistically, parents really do this, and, you know, unrealistic expectations, blah, blah, blah. But it all goes back to you want to do something that has a good person job fit. I mean, when I started college, this was back when I was 18, I thought I wanted to be an engineer. I spent a lot of money only to drop the program because I found the work environment to be awful for me. So I went into mapping, and by the time I had gotten to it and found that I loved it, I had to give it up because of the fact that I couldn't afford my financial aid got cut and I couldn't afford it. I went to community college. I struggled to get a degree in social science and just recently got it, a year later than it should have taken. And I still live with my family. But you know what? I found a job that I like. It took years. It took 5 years, really. From the time I was 16, when I started trying to work, to the time I was 21. And really, now that I have something that I enjoy doing, I want to see how well it can go. And I'm constantly looking for new ways to take that job and make it something new and exciting. I mean, initially this job scared me. There was a lot of stress. There was a lot of anxiety. But I kept with it because I saw something of value in it. And I feel like this character is partially at fault. I don't want to victim blame here. But this character is partially at fault because they aren't seeking value. And I think if they sought value, they might be able to take their job and actually retool it into something better. But I feel like this isn't indicative of how jobs are. And that's just another criticism I have with this. Alright. So it's a rainy night. Your girlfriend basically calls you, tells you to come over, and she decides that she wants to be intimate with you. Now, you're still in a foul mood, negative energy, but the thing is, you have 3 options. You either unwind with her, you suggest to do something else, or tell her you're not in the mood. I don't think you should ignore her advances. I don't think it's conducive to your health. You need affection. Because you didn't do the cat thing, obviously, because you wouldn't be able to handle the responsibility, and that's fine. But you need affection. You need to be affectionate with someone. Even if you don't feel like you can. Affection is the best way to get really to improve, to cultivate and start to heal. In fact, going back to the pet thing, when I was up at the university in another state that I was in, I every semester, or every term I should say, there'd be a day or two where the Humane Society would come in with shelter animals that had been trained to be around humans. And the students would be allowed to come around and pet them and play with them and enjoy themselves. And it's a really good stress relief. It's really good, especially around finals week, when anxiety is crippling. And it's very important that you really have some sort of affection with something living. Otherwise, you are going to continue to get worse. So at least try to unwind with her before getting physical. Even if it doesn't happen, just being with someone helps. Alright. So you find yourself in the bedroom shortly after a drink. You find that you're trying things physically hurt, but the responsible side effect your medication. But it seems as though it's something is you're able to enjoy the closeness and you fall asleep together happily. So it seems like you're improving. And it's all about improvement and really just continuing. Alright, back to the work thing. Day after day, you trudge home from a job you have come to hate. Job misery seems to reach critical mass. You're not even shedding your related uncomfortable work clothes to help you unwind for the workday. You collapse, blank, and numb. It's not your dream job. You always sort of stuck it out of necessity. It's becoming difficult to do that. You couldn't even begin to imagine what else you could do. Find yourself face to face with the questions you can't ignore. Is your complacency worth this misery? First thing that bothers me. Polishing your resume is crossed out as an option. No, no, no. Regardless of your experience or education, you should have a resume. You should learn how to make one. If you don't know how, you should look it up on the internet, or you should go to a career technical place because they have workshops. There are, small towns even have career technical workshops and employment agencies that will help you do this. You should have a resume. There's no exception for it. Because even if you don't have experience, it talks about the tasks that you know how to do just from being alive and doing things. Just from being a human and actually existing. You do pick up things. It also tells a prospective employer what you're interested in, what the work environment you want is. It gives a comprehensive profile of who you are and just what kind of challenges you want to face. You should have a resume, and there's no excuse for you not to have a resume. The best you can do in this visual novel is at least focus on your experts on your project, aimlessly look through the classifieds, or turn on the TV and let your mind go blank. But putting that out as an option is a problem. There's no point to that. Really, what Zoe Quinn is doing with all of this is putting all of the blame on your job and on your work, and that people are depressed because of the fact that their job is doing it. And I don't think that's the right way to go about it. I really don't. There are so many different causes for depression. There are so many different causes for anxiety. Not to mention that there are people who are genetically predisposed to have conditions such as bipolar disorder. There's all these things, and you're putting it in a very narrow context. And worst of all, what this does, in putting it in such an extreme, in putting it in someone who's more than likely going to spiral and get suicidal, is it's making people who are depressed but not that depressed think that they're normal, and thus they're guilty if they think that they're depressed, or if they give themselves the depression label. I think this game is very counterproductive to what depression is, and how it should be treated or looked at or approached. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try at least by really focus on the thing that you're passionate about. Alright, so you sit on your computer, blow off steam, your thoughts drift along the project, you're talking to yourself, opening it up, and looking to the first time must-see link. Your anger and wooden feelings from daytop seems to be converted to pure passion, and you seem to be overflowing with ideas. You've got a buildup of ideas, and this is a good thing. Always be focusing on things that'll help challenge your mind and help make you passionate. The thing is, you're still getting very depressed. Even with the medication, even with the therapy, the depression is still coming back worse and worse, and it's getting extreme. But I feel that making it this extreme is going to alienate people who have minor depression and think that they shouldn't be complaining. That's one of my major concerns. Alright, a little past 8 p.m. on Tuesday night. You're at your computer, frustration's peaked, rubbing your eyes, sighing heavily. You're working on a project from your job that's stretched to wit's end, meeting a looming deadline. As it works closer and closer, you're certainly doubting your ability to get it done. You're dragging your feet due to complete lack of energy. In spite of wanting to do a good job, you find yourself able to push past it and you're totally useless by it. You slide your hand into your face, look at the screen, and keeps back at you. Hey there, I really need to talk about something. You could use a break, however, you know that you have history of getting distracted again afterward. You can either tell Attic you're busy, regain your focus and not answer, or answer him. Now here's the thing. This person was here for you. And I think you should answer them, but I think you can multitask. I really do, but it's crossed out. So, let's answer. Oh god, I just found out I got cheated on, I don't know what to do. The two of you talk for a long time, you lend shoulder to your friend, give him space, most importantly, it was turmoil. You give him full attention, you keep him from doing something rash, two decides from sleep on it before doing anything. He departs for bed and keep talking to him. You feel sorry for your friend, happy you're able to help, serve time for a reminder you're capable of being useful to someone instead of slowing your medicine down. You find that you're able to do some solid progress. Well, that's good news. It seems that the whole self-actuality is kicking in. As you help others, it helps you help yourself. That's good. That's part of healing. Now it's Saturday afternoon. You're deep in thought on the way home from therapy. You notice time and you're not in negative feedback loops. You get tracked and being expected. You realize that all the other bad days, your lows aren't as bad as easily. Your antidepressant bottle rolls on your dashboard and you take a left turn. You've been on this medication a while now, a period of trying a few different kinds. You have minor side effects, but it's become an unnoticed part of your life. You feel as if your life generally changed for the better recently. You wonder if you need them anymore. You say, maybe I don't need to take them. Again, don't do this. You should not go off your medication unless your therapist clears you for it. If nothing else, give your therapist a call and ask. They will tell you when it's best. There are a lot of times where I don't take my medicine, and I run a dangerous game, because at any moment I could get into a really low point, have an episode, and then be in danger of hurting myself. And it's happened. It happened back in July. There was a time where I had to pull over and call CHP because of the fact that I was in danger of hurting myself. And it probably could have been avoided if I was better at taking my meds. But just giving that as an option is a dangerous game. Alright. Realization, you can't be sure it's general life change to make you better, just a sign the medication is working. Decide against it. It's not really a lesson you'd like to learn the hard way, and the side effects are kind of negligible. The next time you see Dr. Miller, you'll tell her about this. She informs you there's a common trait of thought. People have begun using the medication to help them manage depression anymore. And you experience dodge a bullet because it generally ends poorly. She also asks you to talk to you first for making end decisions about your medication future. You're at Alex's apartment, wide awake in bed, and she's sleeping peacefully beside you. She falls asleep hours ago. You've been laying there unable to shut your brain no longer to fall asleep. You've added the feelings of insecurity about your relationship to the rest of the noise and head-keeping noise. It's kind of a tense night between you two. You arrived stressfully at work, you made dinner together, you barely said a word, you were stuck in your own head and harder time being present with her, as your thoughts turn to all the ways you feel like you're deficient at being a good person. She could tell you were in one of your moods, and she said she wouldn't push you, but missed talking to you as the two of you sat on the couch together. Here's what I'm noticing. You haven't explained your depression to her. It's been months. Why wouldn't you explain it? Why wouldn't you communicate to that person that you care about that you are seeking help? It is a big recovery thing. I mean, I know it's different for everybody, but when I was 17, I spent a week in a mental hospital after almost completely losing it and just going off the deep end and hurting myself. After I came back, I was a little more honest about myself with people. Because for the longest time, people thought I was perfect. And I needed people to understand, for my sake, that I wasn't. And for the people who are closest to you, you've got to be honest with them. And it's hard, and even though you have to worry about what they're going to think of you, in order to heal, you need to do it. And you need to be aware of how that contributes to your needs. Again, this all goes back to your needs. And what you need mentally and physically. So I'd open to her about your situation. So you say you feel like a jerk for accidentally waking her up. You're afraid to put stop any longer. Everything isn't okay. Can I tell you something important? She rubs the sleep out of her eyes. For the rest of the night, you lay side by side holding hands. You tell her everything. You tell her it's more than just feeling sad sometimes. You feel trapped by your mind. You feel nothing at all. You can't shake it off. You tell her you started going to therapy. You feel embarrassed about it. It's working out. She listens to your time. He answers questions how this or that works. As you explain something further, squeezes your hand and tells you she understands and is sad you didn't tell her sooner. Lying silent for a second, the weight of what you did hits you. You desperately want to tell her to say something, tell you how she's feeling how that you're afraid what the answer would be. You start convincing yourself now she knows everything she's going to leave, there's no way to do it. How can I help you? What do you need me to do? You don't know how to fix this, but you don't know you can do anything, and it's something you guys have to live with. She says, I'll live with it with you. She rolls over, hugs her arm around the neck, you don't need to just know that I do. Things are starting to get better, and that's good. Really, the good thing, the thing that I'm starting to like about this game, because before, when I did the previous video, I didn't get this far. But with this, what I'm noticing is, as you get farther into it, recovery is becoming a little easier. But the big thing is still, it's not addressing that a person's worth is measured by themselves, not by what others think of them, or not by how well they compare to others. And I feel that that's being continually perpetuated here, and it bothers me. I think if we get rid of that stigma, I think it'll be a lot better for a lot of people. People suffering from minor depression and people suffering from major depression. But there are still a lot of other reasons that a person would be depressed, and it's not always easy to blame the job. And I think that's just the problem. But let's see. I think that's it for right now. I mean, I could keep going with this game, and I might go on my own time, but I've really said all I can think to say on the matter. I mean, really, I think there's a lot of misconceptions being perpetuated here. Of these, there are 3 which hit home most. Well, actually, probably 4. The first is definitely that you're comparing yourself to others, and how you perform compared to others is something that's the root of all your problems. Because I feel like it doesn't have to be. I feel like if you do things for your own sake and not for what others think of you, you'll be a lot better. And I actually do have a real-world example for this from my job. I was working with a student. No names mentioned, privacy, blah, blah, blah. Student was very unmotivated, getting poor grades, not wanting to try in class. I found out that it's because they didn't trust their teacher. And when I started to work with them and make it less about doing for the teacher and more for doing about themselves, they did improve drastically, suddenly, spontaneously. They got so much more invested in it. And I felt that if they had continued to work that avenue and continued to do it for their own sake and had not fallen back into the distrust of the teacher ruling them, they would have passed that class. The moral is that you have to do things for yourself, not for others. And I feel like Depression Quest pushes the doing for others more than yourself vibe too much. It's using it as a scapegoat. The second thing is lack of communication both with oneself and with others. This individual is very torn with analyzing their needs and often ignores their needs intentionally. Even someone who is not depressed will do that. It's not indicative of depression, it's indicative of poor health, of poor habits, and really poor perspective of one's potential and limits. I think that even the most optimistic person could fall into this, burn out, and end up either having an accident or just completely putting themselves in the hospital because they weren't thinking. I don't think it's indicative of depression. I think that using this as a symptom of depression is mislabeling it. I really do. So I feel like Zoe Quinn missed the mark there. The third thing is definitely the stigma placed on being young and having to be successful, but that relates back to the first. I'm really not sure what else I can say. I think that it's nice that this game was being released for free. I do believe that it's nice that Zoe Quinn is trying to set up donations on her site, but I don't believe this is a good game as being indicative of what depression is. It's too narrow, it's too extreme, it's unrealistic. It basically alienates people who might be depressed, but not to that extreme. That's what it does. And it does way too much to play scapegoats and do really just a disservice to people who are trying to help people with depression, people who have depression, and just so much more than that. I don't have anything good to say about it. I really don't. And I feel bad taking that stance, but that's just how I swing on this. I think the reason this game has gotten so popular, and I don't like saying this, but the reason this game has gotten so popular, despite its lackluster representation of depression, is because of the publicity following the allegations that nepotism was involved in the making of this game. I don't believe that Zoe Quinn did anything sexual to promote this game. I'm not in that line of reason. I'm not on that side of the argument because I have seen no evidence to point to that. And I think that the continued allegations after no evidence has come up, I think that is very wrong, screwed up. I think it's offensive to her. I think it's offensive to her as a developer. But at the same time, I feel like she rode this publicity. I feel like she used her position after getting attacked to promote her game. Because you have reporters doing so much damage control right now, it's not even funny. I am suspicious that the hacking into her account and Phil Fish's was actually done by her and Phil Fish. I'm very suspicious of that. And I feel like the criticism was used to propel the game. Because on its own, I don't feel like this game would have gotten a bunch of publicity. I don't. It's very mediocre. It's not indicative of reality. And it's trying too hard to paint an image of what people should see depression as, because depression is serious. But it's not this serious and extreme. At least not for everybody. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've had to call 911 on myself 3 or 4 times a year because of the fact that I get to a point where I get so low I feel like I'm gonna hurt myself. I've had to miss work because I feel like I'm pathetic or like I don't really contribute anything at all. I've had to abandon friends and family when they're doing stuff and go sulk or just basically let my anxiety die down. But you know what? It happens, and I understand it happens, but I still try really hard to check my emotions and make sure that I'm not spiraling. It's up to the individual to make sure that they're not spiraling. And if they are spiraling, then they have to get help. And if you ignore your needs, if you ignore your health, really, it is on you. And I hate saying that, because it sounds like victim blaming, but it's not. Ignoring your health is on you. Saying that a person is going to ignore their health, and that they are not wrong for ignoring their health, which is something this visual novel is trying to do, is disconcerting, because it's a very dangerous thing to do. It could push some very extreme people deeper into their depression. It could make people who aren't very depressed feel like they have nothing to worry about or feel guilty, and that's not right. So those are my thoughts. Really, I would have been more specific, but we're already at probably around 45 minutes now, and I do want to stop this. If you do want to keep going, feel free to play the game. Link is at the top, depressionquest.com. It's up to you to decide if you like it or not. Thank you.